Hi, we're Nia and Marianne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every Friday where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too. So if there's something that you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon.
Hi, yeah. We're
Hello.
going to talk about something that I found really fascinating when I first read about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's relevant to health coaching, and in the sense that an awareness of one's own maybe personality traits, and then
Mm-hmm.
how we therapeutically set up a coaching session with somebody else who might actually respond differently than we do. And I think um, over a long career of consulting,
Mm.
it took me a long time to learn this lesson, and maybe I could have shortened it. So this is an attempt to shorten it for other people. Is that
Yeah.
I was obviously very good to the audience that was just like me, because
Yes.
I could tell how they were responding, felt sort of familiar, but
Mm-hmm.
I was very unfamiliar with quite a lot of people's responses, but wasn't aware of it. So years ago, do you remember reading about the Marshmallow Test? It was
Mm.
done in America in 1970 by a psychologist, Stanford University. And I think it caught my eye because it was about marshmallows. And I thought, oh, this is an interesting little test. It was about preschoolers who were put in a room with a marshmallow, and you would promise them they could double their investment if they waited 15 minutes, or they could just eat the marshmallow and get on, but they'd only have one. The hypothesis was that children would respond differently to the situation. By the way, yeah, they offered them right in the beginning pretzels or marshmallows because they knew some children
Would
might.
prefer pretzels. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you think won in terms of
Oh,
numbers?
well, it was obviously the marshmallow, wasn't it? Everyone wants a marshmallow.
Although I did think about you because you like savory snacks, and I
I don't
thought you
know.
might have been that child who went for the pretzels, but I would definitely have been the pink marshmallow one.
Well, yeah, well, it would depend on the colour, wouldn't it?
And yes, I like the pinks. Don't taste any different.
Taste any different?
Still love marshmallows. No, never taste any different. You know the ones I also used to like, the clear jelly sweets
Yes.
much better than the coloured one. Again, absolutely no reason.
Anyway.
Anyway, back to the marshmallow test. I was intrigued by this because I thought of myself as a preschooler, the one on the photos, but you can't really get back into their mind. But I thought, which preschooler would I have been?
Mm.
Would I have been the impetuous? Look, I'm not going to look at that for 15 minutes because that seems like a long time to a
Yes, it's
preschooler.
a very
I
long
can't quite
time.
work out what 15 minutes will feel like. And I'm in a room, the door's shut. I've got a bell, by the way, so
Okay.
I can summon somebody back.
Is that all they had? A room and a bell and a marshmallow?
Yes, and they had to look at it. That was the other thing. So there was various nuances to this. But
Mm.
anyway, what the
Mm.
hypothesis I think was that some kids would make that cognitive jump
Yeah.
to realizing that if you waited, you got two. And would that, so that doesn't mean anything in a preschooler necessarily, but was this an innate personality trait where people could delay gratification later in life, and this would make them more successful, right?
Okay, so it was all about controlling themselves. So how well they controlled themselves at 5 would predict how well they would control themselves in future situations. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was the sort of interest, and there was a few mistakes right in the beginning when you look back at it. That's what it was very interesting to look at. So they used children from Stanford Nursery,
Okay.
which was staff kids and student kids.
So intelligent.
Yeah, this was already a biased sample. And when they did this much later with a more diverse group of children, they got different results. But that's,
Mm.
yeah. Okay, so this is the first bit. So they did it first in the locked room with just the marshmallow or the pretzel. The next thing is they gave them a slinky. So the child in the room with the marshmallow, but with a slinky to play with.
Yeah.
And they found that kids generally waited slightly longer with the slinky,
Okay, because that's something to occupy their mind. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
and which is sort of predictable.
Love a slinky.
And then they put more toys in the room. And
Yeah.
again, predictably, kids who had more options for passing the time
Mhm.
waited longer. Still, some of them would have gone before the 15 minutes
Yeah.
because working out 15 minutes is quite hard when you're preschool. Anyway, in the end, the sample size was about 50 for each of those tests, and it did add up because they did quite a lot of different sort of tests. The sample size grew to about 630 kids altogether on the different arms of the study, right?
Right.
And before we go on about the results, which child do you think you'd have been? Would you have been, and that's what's fascinating for me, would you have been the cognitive smart kid as they sort of expected some of the
Yeah.
smart kids would work out, that they could delay that gratification and increase it, or would you have been more impetuous?
So
What do you
this is
think?
really tricky for me because I would have liked to have thought. So looking back, I think you like to think, wouldn't you, that you would have been the smart kid. You would have put two and two together, and
Yeah,
you would have thought, wait, in a minute, it's double or nothing. I'm going to get what I want, and I'm going to get twice as much.
yeah,
So I would
yeah.
have waited. The other
Yeah,
thing that I think
yeah.
might have crossed my mind at 5 is if I do eat this marshmallow, I'm going to get into trouble because they've told me I need to wait, and then they'll give me another one. So
Yeah.
I
So that
honestly,
slightly skews the result.
it does, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So honestly, I think I would have waited, but not necessarily because I was gonna
yeah.
get double.
So there's the beginnings of the problems with doing any experimenting on humans,
Yes,
because
because we
there's
think
so
outside the
many
box.
nuances.
Yeah. Um, and then, obviously on another
Yeah.
day when I wasn't thinking about A, getting into trouble or B, getting 2 marshmallows, I might have just been 5 and thought, "I have this marshmallow, here we go."
Yeah. Yeah. Because I know you fairly well. I would have predicted you would have been the waiter. And
Yeah.
I predicted that I would not have waited because I think that now we have done a lot more work on our own personalities and how we operate. That I think I
Yeah.
would have been the 5-year-old that thought, you know what, I'm not going to hang around. I like the pink one. I'm going to eat that and never mind the fact that I can't have two because it doesn't really matter. And I might momentarily have looked at you and thought, you smart girl who's
Now
now
you've
getting
got 2.
two, and I've
Mm.
only had one. But I think it would have been fairly transient. I would have skipped off and done something else.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. The reasons are so nuanced that you can't necessarily, I don't think, then use that as a predictor for adulthood. But did
Yeah,
they?
so what did they follow up?
So years later, they sent out questionnaires. Of course,
Mhm. Yeah.
a lot of people lost a follow up and all that, and they sent out the first questionnaires after the SATs. They were looking for educational attainment and whether there was a correlation, and there was.
Okay. So if we were able to delay gratification,
Yes.
they would be smarter in adulthood, and that would mean that they would have better jobs and higher achievers.
So they thought
Okay.
this was quite useful because if you think about it, delaying gratification is a really useful tool if, for instance, you're told that you've got to do 6 years training for something or
Yeah.
even 2 years training for something. Some people will say, well, I'm not going to spend that time paying all that money to train. And someone else,
Yes.
I mean, this is very simplistic, but there was a correlation. But remember, correlations are not causative. So that's the first thing. And then a few other people borrowed that data. And the reason I'm even talking about this marshmallow test is because it crossed my mind whether people who are more disciplined in terms of lifestyle, so people that exercise eat well, and attain their goals in terms of the things they set up for themselves.
Yeah.
Are those the preschoolers that would have delayed gratification? Is there some hookup?
Hmm.
And interestingly, people use this data in various ways, but one of them looked at BMI.
Okay.
And I mean, this is very, you know, tricky to look at. But they looked at whether there was a hookup between that the original data and people's BMIs. Now you do lose a lot to follow up, and you get a slightly, biased sample coming
Hmm.
back for people filling in your questionnaire. So I think this is all a bit, tricky to use as
As an
a
absolute.
confirmation of any
Yeah.
hypothesis, particularly. But there was a correlation, interestingly, and the variance they found in BMI was statistically relevant depending on the time of the wait. So people who waited longer were less likely to have problematic BMIs. Now, I think this is just interesting
Hmm.
as a general sort of thought.
Yeah.
If we used personality tendencies in health coaching, which
Mm.
we are
We.
quite interested in doing,
Yeah.
only because it shortens the time about how to motivate somebody who wants to change something in their lives. Can we shorten that by not giving them all the options, but discussing options that might appeal to them more than others, and maybe not the options that appeal to us? Because I think, and the beauty of working with someone else like you and I work together, is that we're always amazed how different we are. We're reminded all the time that how we
Mm.
respond to things or how we think about things are different. And I think for us, it's a real gift. But it's given us such an eye opener, especially me, about self awareness and about
Mm.
how
Mm.
much it matters to know yourself in order to motivate somebody else. Because lo and behold, they're not all like you.
I think that's the best part,
Yes.
isn't it, about
Yes.
working with humans, is that nobody is the same and everybody is
Yeah,
different. So
yeah,
we're not
yeah,
all
yeah,
computers. We
yeah,
can't just go, you know what, this is the program, plug
yeah.
it all in and X will follow. And I think we often forget that when we look at
Mm.
health because we're so directative and say, actually, we have this protocol and we know if you follow this protocol, X result will happen. But they don't take into account, their past experiences of that person, the thoughts and values and beliefs of that person, or even, just their fears. So we have to take all of that into account and we can't treat people as robots. So I love personalities in that respect.
I've got a great example. When I was first very excitable diabetic nurse, I was learning all about diabetes, and I got very excited about improving the care of the patients,
Mm.
and that I developed, without asking the patients at all, I developed a booklet that
Mm.
they would use to follow their own results. So every time they came to see me, I would fill this booklet in with their results. It was a way of actually giving the patients some information they could keep. It was about empowerment. And in the
Hmm.
booklet, I also put things I wanted them to remember or whatever. And they could go to secondary care and take the booklet. So there would be this shared care thing.
Yeah.
But I never asked the patients. So I got them printed. I got some money from somewhere. I was very excited about this. This really brought it home to me that this
Mm.
would appeal to me, and therefore it would appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
But what I found was that the patients generally pitched up without the booklet, and
Hmm.
they couldn't remember where they'd put it, and they had absolutely no
No intention of
interest in
using it. Nope.
it. No. So, and it slowly dawned on me that I could have saved myself an awful lot of trouble by just doing a little bit of market research
Yeah.
and saying to 20 people I saw in a week, what do you think? Would you be excited about this? And knowing that people would say yes sometimes to please me, but would
Mm.
still not actually be excited about the idea.
Yeah.
For health coaching, the relevance to good health coaching really for us is that the marshmallow test was far too simple. That in fact, saying that people have innate traits without looking, first of all, at the whole nurture thing, which of course is very relevant in these experiments. So they found out much later, I think it was as late as 2000, they repeated this test with a lot more sample size and also diversity. And what came out really was socioeconomics, that socioeconomics are often at the bottom of a lot of nuances. So the child who didn't have much food at home would have been more likely to have eaten the marshmallow quickly rather than wait in case he lost that one, or she. And so there we go. There were gender differences. There were all sorts of relevant economic and social factors that were never taken into account in the original research.
Yeah. I feel like neurodiversity should probably have been taken into that account as well, because people who struggle with impulse control,
Exactly, which we didn't
which we weren't
even.
aware of, might have eaten it faster.
Exactly.
And even but they would have been highly intelligent.
Yes. That's what comes through eventually is we would have considered that we wanted to be the smart kid, right? So if you'd asked me in the beginning, I'd have thought, oh, I really wanted to be the smart kid, but maybe I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Now I think, well, they're smart, and they're smart about all those kids because it's so incredibly complex that the kid
Yeah.
who works out that they'd rather be in the moment and maybe not lose the one they've got might be as smart as the kid who says, I don't know, I'm going to wait because I'm going to get two,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to enjoy these two now because I'm so worried about whether I'll lose them. So there's all sorts of pluses and minuses about each way of thinking, isn't there? And that's what you and I have
Mm.
learned together, isn't it?
It's quite a simple test on the face of it. You look at it, you think you either eat the marshmallow or you don't,
Yeah.
and you get double. But actually,
Yeah.
there's a huge amount of other stuff going on,
Yeah.
and I think
Yeah.
maybe that's we try and oversimplify things, and I think in health particularly, we try and oversimplify things.
Yes.
And actually, there's a huge amount of stuff going on, and you
Yeah.
can't separate your health from everything else that goes on in your life, that has gone on in your life, and everything is relevant and everything is different for every single person.
So I set out looking at the marshmallow test, only out of interest in imagining myself, and particularly imagining the two of us and how we would have differed. And I mean, okay, we're different in age anyway, so that would change things. But I know I would always probably have been more spontaneous and less likely to have waited. And but what it really comes to is that hypothesis doesn't necessarily work in the long term of life because I'm now incredibly disciplined about things I never thought I would be. So you can override or use to positive effect the things you thought. So I'm not displeased, I think, to be the person I am. And that's the point, isn't it? So I can use the good things about myself, and I can be self-aware about things that I maybe have got some Achilles heels. So self-awareness is everything in terms of yourself.
Yeah, we're all the sum of our experiences, and
So it's very important if you're going to health coach to know yourself before you try to facilitate other people's behavior change because yeah, behavior change is not a prescription. You can't just prescribe. So I'm really that's what fascinated me about the marshmallow
yeah,
test.
and that's the whole thing, isn't it? About health and about behavior change and about health coaching and about making changes. If it were that easy, you'd have done it already. Because the
Yeah,
point is,
you'd have
it's
just got the
not.
prescription.
Of course.
Someone would have
Yeah,
just said, if you want to avoid obesity, this is the what you got
this
to
is what you
do.
do.
Well,
Yeah,
why can't we do that? Well, there we go. That's the
yeah.
whole thing, isn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big thing is that people think, oh well, it just must be this easy, but unfortunately, it just isn't.
Mhm.
Never
Nice to
mind.
see you, Nia.
Nice to
Talk
see
again
you.
soon.
See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.